September 1943, Salerno, Italy, 06:15 hours. The dawn broke not with gentle light, but with the brutal, blinding flash of muzzle fire. The air, thick with the scent of salt and cordite, vibrated with a sound distinct from the rhythmic thump of mortars or the staccato rattle of machine guns. It was a deep, insistent roar, a heavy breathing, a sustained, punishing symphony of violence. This was the voice of the American infantry landing on the rugged, unforgiving shores of mainland Europe. This was the sound of the Browning automatic rifle, the bar. For 2 decades, the M1918 Browning automatic rifle had been an unloved, often misunderstood weapon. Designed in the waning days of the Great War, it was a walking paradox. A light machine gun masquerading as a rifle, too heavy for the average rifleman, yet too fragile for continuous fire. It was the misfit of the American arsenal, perpetually overshadowed by the revolutionary M1 Garand. Yet as the Allied forces fought their grueling way up the mountainous spine of Italy, a campaign of unrelenting close-quarters combat, this forgotten weapon, this heavy rifle, would emerge as the single most terrifying infantry asset on the battlefield. The irony was devastating. The Italian soldier, renowned for his courage but hampered by obsolete small arms doctrine, was about to face a machine born from a different, far more brutal vision of modern war. What the Italian High Command failed to grasp initially was that the American soldier was not just armed with a semi-automatic rifle, he was supported by mobile, devastating automatic fire that could move with him through the mud and rock. The bar was a beast of steel and walnut. Weighing over 16 pounds fully loaded, it was a burden, yet its heft was key to its stability. It fed from a 20-round box magazine, firing the massive .30-06 round, the same powerful cartridge used by the Garand and the heavy machine guns. Its rate of fire, selectable between 300 to 550 rounds per minute, was not its most impressive feature, but its sustainability and mobility were. In the hands of a dedicated barman, it was a tactical equalizer, delivering machine gun suppression wherever the infantry squad moved. Sergeant Frank "Rocky" Roccanti, 34th Infantry Division, recounted memoir. The first time I saw the bar used in anger was in a wheat field outside of Paestum. We were pinned down by an MG-42, the Spandau. That thing sounded like a tearing sheet of canvas. Corporal Miller, he was maybe 20, stood up, bracing the bar against his hip. He didn't spray. He just breathed 3 bursts into that pillbox. 3 bursts. The German fire just stopped. The thump, thump, thump of the bar was slower, heavier than the German gun, but it felt like a hammer hitting an anvil. It had authority. It made the air tremble. That day I learned the bar wasn't a rifle. It was a mobile artillery piece for the common foot soldier. The Italian army, by contrast, relied primarily on the Carcano rifle, a solid but bolt-action weapon, and the Breeder Model 30 machine gun. The Breeder, while capable, was inherently complex, fed by fragile strip clips, and featured an oiler system necessary for reliable operation, a disastrous flaw in the dusty, wet conditions of the Apennines. Their doctrine emphasized the fixed, heavy machine gun. This strategic difference created a fatal vacuum in the Italian defensive posture, the mobile firepower gap. When the American squad advanced, their automatic fire came with them. The Italian response often remained static, leading to catastrophic local defeats. Carrying the bar was a distinct responsibility. The barman was often the strongest and most trusted soldier in the squad. His job was to be the axis of maneuver, the mobile center of gravity that allowed the rest of the squad, armed with Garands, to advance under covering fire. This demanded not just physical strength, but discipline and an instinct for fire control. He was the most targeted man on the battlefield, the one the enemy had to silence. He carried 12 to 15 magazines, nearly 20 pounds of ammunition, a lethal, exhausting load. In the weeks following the Salerno landings, German intelligence reports, initially dismissive of the American infantry as soft city boys, began to change their tune. They detailed the unexpected volume of walking fire and the brutal effectiveness of the automatic rifle. They noted that a mere 9-man American squad could put out more sustained, flexible automatic fire than a comparable Wehrmacht squad equipped with the heavier MG-34. The Germans, masters of machine gun doctrine, had not yet fully appreciated that the Americans had successfully bridged the gap between the rifleman and the machine gunner. The bar was making the American squad itself a small, adaptable machine gun crew. This transformation, from a technological curiosity to a strategic game-changer, is the heart of the Italian campaign's infantry war. If you want to dive deeper into the tactics, the technology and the raw human courage that shaped the greatest conflict in history, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're tracking the thunderbolt through the mud and blood of Italy. The Italian peninsula was not a blitzkrieg canvas, it was a grinder. Every hill was a fortress, every valley a killing zone. The campaign quickly devolved into a series of costly, inch-by-inch advances against the deeply entrenched defenses of the German winter line and the supporting Italian Republican forces. It was a war of rocks, rain, and relentless vigilance, demanding a level of close-quarters fighting unseen in the wide open spaces of North Africa. This was where the heavy, persistent fire of the bar found its true calling. The M1 Garand gave the Americans a clear advantage in individual firepower, but the bar gave them the tactical rhythm of the advance. Traditional assault doctrine required machine guns to stay behind, fixed to lay down suppressive fire while the riflemen ran forward. The bar walked with them. Its primary role was not to achieve spectacular kill counts, but to keep the enemy's heads down long enough for the rest of the squad to close the distance, locate the firing position, and deliver accurate rifle or grenade fire. The continuous heavy thump-thump-thump of the bar meant the Germans never had a moment of silence to properly sight their own weapons. Hauptmann Klaus Richter, 305th Infantry Division, excerpt from War Diary, December 1943. The Americans fight differently here than we were trained for. They have a rifle in their squads that sounds like a miniature heavy machine gun. It fires slowly, but with tremendous force. When they advance, there is always this heavy, mobile fire. Our doctrine dictates the concentration of automatic fire from the MG42. Theirs allows for the distribution of automatic fire everywhere. It is a frightening feeling for the men in the foxholes. The Army rifleman does not need to wait for his support. He is the support. Their movement under this automatic umbrella is relentless. It is not the rifle itself that is the problem, but the tactical flexibility it grants them. While spectacular in the assault, the bar's true value often shone during defense. German counterattacks in Italy were brutal, concentrated affairs, often relying on the psychological impact of their fast-firing machine guns and the momentum of the charge. When dug in, the barman became the pivot point of the defense. Lying prone, using the weapon's built-in bipod, though often discarded due to the weight, he could lay down long bursts of fire. The weight of the 30 B06 rounds, combined with the bar's stability, meant the German assault troops were not just suppressed, they were physically hit hard enough to break the momentum of the charge. The American use of the powerful 30-06 Springfield cartridge was a significant advantage over many Italian calibers, such as the 6.5 full 52mm Carcano or the later 7.35mm. The heavy, full-power American cartridge delivered superior kinetic energy and range. For the bar, this meant that bursts of fire were not just noise. They were devastating, reliable strikes against targets up to 600 yards away, even against light cover. The ability to use the same ubiquitous ammunition as the Garand streamlined logistics, a minor but critical detail that allowed the bar to remain in the fight even when supply lines were strained across the rugged terrain. The bar's early life had been marred by structural problems and doctrinal confusion. Its initial designation as a light rifle for walking fire had seen soldiers using it from the hip, an inefficient use of its power. In the unforgiving crucible of the Italian mountains, its true identity was forged. The American infantry learned to treat it as a squad automatic weapon, COW, the essential mobile machine gun. Engineers responding to field reports constantly refined it, leading to the final iconic M1918A2 variant, slower rate of fire for better control, a heavier barrel for heat dissipation, and the bipod, even if rarely used, provided an option for fixed positions. The despised underdog had finally become the professional's weapon. The relationship between the barman and his squad was one of constant, terrifying dependence. Every soldier knew that if the bar fell silent, the advance would falter and lives would be lost. The fear was twofold: the fear of being targeted by a mortar and the fear of the barman being hit. When a barman went down, the immediate priority was not just to retrieve him, but to retrieve the weapon itself, passing it immediately to the next designated soldier. This machine, once an inanimate piece of metal, became a living extension of the squad's will to fight. Private Leo Marinelli, 1st Armored Division Support. Letter home, January 1944. The bar saved my life more times than I can count, and it killed more men than I ever wanted to see. Carrying it felt like carrying a furnace. It was hot, it was heavy, and it demanded everything you had. But when you're freezing, dug in on the side of a mountain, and you hear the Germans starting to crawl up the slope in the darkness, that 20-round magazine is the only thing standing between you and God. You grip the foregrip, take a breath, and you just let that beautiful rhythmic thump, thump, thump answer their challenge. It was the sound of the line holding. By mid-1944, the fighting had ground into a grueling war of attrition around the Liri Valley and the formidable defenses of Monte Cassino. The sheer industrial scale of the American war effort was now amplifying the bar's impact. While Germany struggled to maintain the production of its complex machine guns, America was churning out weapons and ammunition in staggering numbers. Over 14,000 M1918 bars were produced during the war years, supplementing the over 100,000 already manufactured. More critically, the supply of .30-06 ammunition was virtually limitless. The ability to feed the bar's constant, hungry consumption of cartridges gave the American squad an enduring staying power that their Axis opponents could simply not match. Every American platoon had reliable access to continuous heavy fire. Every German platoon considered the loss of its MG-42 an operational catastrophe. To the beleaguered Italian and German defenders, the bar began to take on an almost mythological status. Unlike the rapid, high-pitched zipper sound of the MG-42, the bar's deeper, slower cadence gave it a psychological presence. It sounded controlled, deliberate, and unstoppable. Soldiers on the receiving end often overestimated its numbers, believing that entire platoons were armed with the weapon. This misperception, fueled by fear and constant exposure to its powerful suppressive fire, was a victory for American infantry tactics. It was the perfect deception, a squad weapon that sounded like a heavy machine gun. Soldato Giorgio Bianchi, San Marco Marine Division, captured interrogation transcript. They had a rifle, a very large rifle, that sounded like a cannon. Our officers said it was too heavy, too wasteful of ammunition. They did not understand. When this gun fired, we could not raise our heads. The bullets sounded different. They broke the stone walls where we were hiding. Our breeder was good, yes, but it took too long to load the clips. This American gun, it just kept firing, and the man who carried it, he walked with his friends. It was not a machine gun. It was a soldier who carried a wall of fire. It took the courage out of your stomach. The bar was not without its human and mechanical flaws. The biggest mechanical challenge was overheating and the resulting damage to the operating spring. The weapon was robust, but constant rapid fire, which was often required in the heat of battle, would stress the mechanism. The barman had to be his own armorer, constantly aware of his firing discipline, managing the barrel heat, and clearing the occasional stovepipe. This vulnerability created a momentary opportunity for the enemy, and the tension surrounding this critical machine's potential failure was a constant source of suspense for the squad. The psychological burden on the barman was immense. He was a focal point of fire, a walking priority target, and his failure meant the failure of the entire squad's maneuver. He often carried extra ammunition for his comrades, but his own specialized magazines could not be shared easily. He was isolated in his role, constantly anticipating the sound of the enemy's main machine gun, knowing he had to silence it or suppress it with his powerful rhythmic bursts. It was a role that demanded cold, calculating aggression under the most extreme conditions. General George S. Patton, Jr., the complex and brilliant tactician, observed the weapon's performance in North Africa and then in Sicily. He was a man who understood the value of speed, power, and morale. His assessment of the bar remains one of its most powerful historical endorsements. He called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. For Patton, The bar was the physical embodiment of the American infantry's aggressive doctrine, a portable, reliable source of offensive firepower that ensured the advance never stalled simply due to lack of a heavy weapon. This endorsement solidified the weapon's place in the American arsenal, demanding its constant supply. As the Allies broke through the German lines, the BAR was instrumental in exploiting the breakthrough. It was a perfect weapon for the fast-paced house-to-house fighting in towns and for clearing the final, desperate German roadblocks. In these final climactic moments of the campaign's first phase, the BR's mobile, suppressive fire cut the heart out of the remaining German defense, allowing the riflemen to maneuver and conquer. The silent, heavy breathing of the bar was now the death knell of the German defenses in central Italy. As the fighting moved into northern Italy, the strategic focus sharpened. The bar was no longer fighting the under-equipped Italian forces, but the elite Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS units, fully equipped with the legendary MG-42 machine gun, nicknamed Hitler's buzzsaw or Spandau by the Allies. This was the defining tactical confrontation of the war, the American doctrine of distributed automatic fire versus the German doctrine of concentrated automatic fire. MG-42, firing at an astonishing rate of up to 2,500 rounds per minute, the MG-42 created a continuous, tearing sheet of lead. Its terrifying sound was its greatest psychological weapon, instantly pinning down entire platoons. Bar. Firing at a deliberate 450 to 550 rounds per minute, the bar was controlled and precise. It lacked the MG-42's shock factor, but it excelled in accuracy, ease of aiming and, crucially, mobility and immediate deployment. The irony was striking. The Germans created a weapon designed purely for suppression and shock, needing a dedicated crew to carry and feed it. The Americans adapted a rifle into a mobile weapon designed for maneuver under fire. The BR man's challenge was not to outfire the MG-42, but to suppress it long enough for a coordinated maneuver to flank it, a task requiring supreme confidence and tactical awareness. In a typical engagement in the Apennines, the MG-42 would open fire, pinning the American squad. The barman's job was immediate and terrifying: move slightly, establish a firing position, and deliver continuous bursts into the area of the German gun's muzzle flash. His goal was not to destroy the gun, but to make the German gunner and loader drop their heads and cease fire for 30 to 60 seconds. This momentary silence, the window of opportunity, was all the riflemen needed to execute the flanking maneuver, often using rifle grenades or a mortar team to finish the job. Lieutenant Alistair Macready, 85th Infantry Division, Post-Action Report. You could always tell when the MG-42 was about to fire. There's a click and then the world turns into a siren of tearing metal. The first order was always bar, fire, suppress. Private Johnson, our barman, he was fearless. He'd adjust his position maybe 2 feet, sight his target by the dust and just lay into it. That heavy, rhythmic fire, that thump, 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 it was like a counterspell to the German noise. It didn't outshoot the MG-42, but it told the German gunner, "I'm here, I'm accurate, and I will not stop until my men are behind your position." Johnson's job was survival, not just for himself, but for 8 other men waiting for that beautiful pause. The intense duel between the bar and the MG-42 led to devastating casualties, particularly among the barmen. German snipers and mortar crews quickly learned to prioritize the heavy-shouldered soldiers carrying the automatic rifle. Yet, the American logistical structure ensured that the machine's influence never waned. Replacement bars were always available, and the training pipeline constantly fed new, hardened soldiers into the barman role. The weapon's legacy was built not just on its technology, but on the willingness of hundreds of men to shoulder the deadliest, yet most essential burden of the war. Throughout the Italian campaign, the Wehrmacht failed to replicate the BR's specific doctrine. They had excellent automatic weapons. The FG-42 paratrooper rifle was conceptually similar, but too complex and limited in distribution. The German focus on the centralized machine gun position remained their greatest vulnerability. The mystery lay in this doctrinal blindness. Why did the masters of machine gun warfare not recognize the power of the squad as the primary automatic fire unit? The answer lay in the heavy reliance on conscripts, the drain of the Eastern Front, and the inflexibility of established military thought. which blinded them to the subtle yet profound shift in American infantry philosophy represented by the BAR. The bar continued to thunder through the final brutal stages of the Italian campaign, across the Gothic Line, and into the Po Valley. Its most defining characteristic, its ability to move fire, proved irreplaceable in the chaotic high-speed advances of 1945. It was the implement that allowed American forces to relentlessly press retreating German columns, turning every engagement from a tactical skirmish into a pursuit. The machine that had started as an oddity in 1918 ended the war as the technological and doctrinal cornerstone of the American squad. The bar's ultimate victory was not just measured in enemy casualties, but in the operational tempo it dictated. It gave the Allied forces in Italy the necessary combination of individual marksmanship, garand, and mobile suppression, BAR, to overcome the formidable terrain and the determined, well-armed German opposition. It fundamentally changed how infantry was deployed, establishing the concept of the squad automatic weapon that would influence military doctrine for the next century, culminating in modern weapons like the M249 SAW. Mr. Arthur W. Jones, Springfield Armory Technician, 1950 interview. "We were told for years the bar was too heavy, too hard to control, too expensive, but what Patton and those young men in Italy showed us was that its value was not in weight, but in trust. The infantryman trusted that the bar would fire the heavy round when he needed it most, that it wouldn't fail in the mud, and that its power would punch through the light cover the Germans were using. The bar's legacy is a lesson in listening to the soldier, not the textbook. A heavy rifle is only heavy until you need it to save your life. Then, it's the lightest thing in the world." The soldiers who carried the bar often carried the psychological weight of their responsibility long after the war. They had been the tip of the spear, the human embodiment of the squad's offensive power. They had learned to live with the fear, but also with the immense pride of being the one soldier who held the line, who made the difference between a successful advance and a bloody retreat. The M1918 bar was eventually replaced by newer, lighter weapons, but its doctrinal shadow is long. The concept it perfected, the readily available mobile source of sustained automatic fire, is now standard for every major military force. It was the weapon that bridged the gap between the bolt-action era and the true age of automatic warfare. It proved that a weapon, even if initially flawed, could be forged into a masterpiece by the brutal, honest demands of combat. It was indeed the implement that empowered the American soldier, and in the unforgiving crucible of the Italian mountains, gave the Allies the fire superiority needed to break the German hold on Europe. The Italian campaign was defined by mud, mountains, and the devastating heavy counterpoint of the Browning automatic rifle. The men on the ground had faced a choice: adapt or perish. The bar, a piece of technology almost discarded by history, gave them the means to adapt, to push forward, and to win. They called it the Beast, the Hammer, or simply the Thunder. But General Patton's assessment stands as the most accurate epitaph. It was the greatest battle implement, and it roared its way across the face of Europe. If you feel the ground shake beneath the thunder of history, make sure to like this video, share it with fellow history buffs, and subscribe to our channel. The story of the Second World War is endless, and we will continue to uncover the tactical secrets and the human drama behind the machines that won it. What forgotten piece of technology should we dive into next? Let us know in the comments below.